there are so many leaders that are not self-aware, and it's like you're not leading from the front. You're telling me what I need to be and what I need to do, but you're not aware of yourself. You know, and it gets confusing to me. Where's that self-awareness piece? So can I be honest, or are you gonna take offense to that, or you know, are you gonna be open to receive? So it just gets that self-awareness piece, and it's confusing, especially when you're molding upcoming, you know, like you're a teacher, you know, you have children that you're being an example for these people when you're not self-aware. Like, what message are you?
Serving others and being the voice for others. I've worked with a lot of at-risk youth who have always been told what they wouldn't be or what they couldn't be. And so in my profession, and especially in nonprofit, you have to be the voice and you have to serve others, even when it seems like it's no point, but there's some point in there. So that's always one of my biggest values in life, is to learn how to serve others.
A few things that he kind of touched on when you talk about the lack of, like, some things we overlook, I think, is the importance and the value of family. And I say that because family shapes the individual and family defines purpose. If you really look at, you know, who your family is and why you were created and why you're given the unique skills and talents and things that you have as an individual. So I like the history of things and researching why things happen to determine how we can come up with a solution. And, you know, I look at, you know, a fourth generation preacher's kid, but also a fourth generation entrepreneur. And people are like, well, where did that come from? It's like, well, if you look at your family and you grew up seeing these experiences and this kind of intangible experience of learning, right? I guess you can call it the on-the-job learning from watching your parents all the time and watching your families and understand the dynamics of your family and how that shapes who you are as a person. I think in society, you have a lot of people who, you know, when you talk about just looking at like geography, when families are split apart, you know, your family is all over the country. People are walking around without a sense of self because they don't have the value of the family. If you don't know who you are as a person, you don't know what you're good at, what you're gonna do, what you're successful in, what your purpose is. I think society in general, you know, and that trickles down to social media. You know, if you have a strong surrounding of family and people that are assuring who you are, then it doesn't matter how many likes you get on a post or if your job is more fulfilling or looks more fun or your life looks more exciting than someone else on social media. I think we're undervaluing the importance of family.
But I mean, even in our generation sometimes and others, like some people don't know how to talk to us, for instance, maybe other generations, or we don't know how to talk to each other. And so, I mean, that could go a bunch of different ways when just communicating could solve so many problems, whether it be within relationships, whether it be in the workplace. I mean, communication is huge.
Adults are losing that ability to connect with someone right there in front of you, maybe even just a stranger of all people.
I would probably say just being transparent and, you know, authentic. That's something that seems like it's so rare in today's society. And I mean, for me, I've been working, before I was working with victims of sex trafficking, I was working with domestic violence victims. So working like with women who have just dealt with so much trauma and they're coming to you and they're having to be so vulnerable. And I just feel like that vulnerability is what connects us, like as humans. And even if we do have a product or a service, I feel like that's what sells it, knowing that this person is sincere and genuine and really believes in what they're selling or whatever they're doing, like as far as service. So I would say authenticity is just huge.
They don't know what they don't know about themselves. And you have to, in order to effectively communicate, right? So I always say, is it important to be right or is it important to be effective, right? Because you can tell that person about themselves and you might be right, but were you effective in influencing them to think differently about how they're approaching the situation?
You should not stereotype, you should not carry that over to somebody else. Even if you've seen something quote unquote bad, that you can't be like, okay, well that person is in the same position, they're probably gonna do the same thing.
Or just, because I've heard of people who were, one of my friends, he was telling me about his sister who used to be this huge Christian, and she brought some people to church that, you know, they were kind of rowdy and all this kind of stuff, and the preacher actually told that girl, you can't bring them back here. And that's when she lost her faith, because she's like, we're supposed to reach out to these people and you're telling me I can't bring them here. And so that's what lost it for her. And that's kind of her breaking point was, we're not treating these people the way God wanted us to, so no, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. When you're forgiven, by people that don't go to church way easier and way earlier than people who do.
We're supposed to come together, shared principles, shared testimonies, whatever, different testimonies, and come in and just get it all out. Unfortunately, what happens though in the church is that there is that judgment,
Right.
and that's what cuts deep in a lot of people, and that faulty leadership, or when you see a leader not holding up to the standards that they're supposed to hold up to. When we're all in our leadership roles, and career-wise, religion-wise, we have a standard to uphold at the end of the day. And so when we don't do that, again, it makes it less authentic for the other person, the other opposing person, to see who we truly are and what we are trying to get the message across.
You rarely see women in leadership, so I think there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, and conversations that still need to be had that I think we've kind of swept under the rug and felt like, oh, we don't need to talk about that anymore because it's the church, right?
What bothers me a little bit is that, I'm excited. I'm really glad that people are starting to speak out about it, that awareness is being brought out. But again, it also goes into that thing of men can be sexually assaulted too, and it's not always seen like that, right? So with me working at a domestic violence shelter, we had a men's shelter too. And when I would tell people that, they were like men are getting abused, and I'm like, yeah, and so, right, and so it's just, I'm excited about the hashtag, but I want us to see these issues as widespread. Again, it's not just generalized to women are being assaulted, but so are, again, that equality across the board, even when it comes to things like that, with the outcries. And so I am excited to see that though, because I feel like a lot, I know with my parents and grandparents, you were brought up, you didn't talk about things like that. You were, it was keep the family business in the family, you know what I'm saying? So I'm excited to see people break and that's one of those things where I'm excited to see people break traditions, where you're taught one thing, but as you get older and on your own personal journey, you say, hey, this is not right. I want to speak out about this. And so I'm just excited to see people be a little bit, especially in front of all of these people who are, constantly did this really happen, and questioning your trauma, to have people be brave enough to still step out. Right.
Just because I've personally experienced that. I was sexually abused when I was younger by a family member, and there were people that questioned me, did that really happen? Did you remember that right? Yeah, because it's burned into my brain.
That's not what that person meant to do.
Exactly. Right. And I'm like, okay, you didn't experience it. Please don't try to put yourself there when you didn't experience what I went through. Right. And so, yeah, I don't. That doesn't sit well with me. So if somebody comes to me, go ahead.
That is the thing, because it's happened to me as a guy. I've been sexually assaulted, and it gets overlooked.
Right.
You report it, and it's overlooked, it's swept under the rug. And I've been told, don't be shocked if nothing ever happens because of this, that, and the other. Right. Especially in the Black community, when something happens, we're taught, again, keep your mouth shut and just pray about it.
People coming out about it, that's one of the only things the internet's actually gotten right, was people being able to say hey, this isn't just you. This happens to so many people.
We have, as a society, have desensitized ourselves to how trauma works, to how bad news works, to where it's kind of we'll just sweep that under the rug, what's next? And then we let a trauma hit a trauma every day until we just kind of that's nothing new. What else do you have for us?
Until it hits us. In our community, most of our leaders were faith-based leaders. Political, Martin Luther King, they all were Reverend Jesse Jackson, all of the notorious leaders in our community were all reverends or people of the faith community. So I think nowadays you see a lot of pastors kind of taking a back step to politics. There aren't a lot of clergy people that are kind of getting out there and really championing a particular side or a particular issue as much as there used to be, and I feel like that is a lost cause that we're undervaluing particularly in the Black community, but just as a whole, I don't see others outside of that really taking that charge either.
It's not something I've done a lot of research on or anything, but like I really don't see why not, because again, if a church is saying, hey, we believe in this guy, then yeah, if I believe in that church, then I believe in that candidate as well. So it's, yes, put your thoughts as just as much as, you know, Matthew McConaughey saying who he would vote for kind of thing. It's let me know what someone that I would rather trust, what their views are.
I like the idea of education and awareness of like voting and the importance of it, and then, you know, helping, because there are so many individuals who are just not even, we know that don't vote, don't even get into those kind of things. So I think just having that education awareness piece, but I don't necessarily feel like, I don't care for that being done on a Sunday morning personally. See, sometimes to me, like that silence just feels like betrayal a little bit, because it's like, why is that not challenging you to have open dialogue? Like, whether it's not about picking a side, but it's about, okay, let's sit around as a staff or as a conversation, yeah, and say, you know, how do you all feel about this? And let's talk about it. I feel like no one ever wants to have that open dialogue anymore.
Because it's uncomfortable.
And it is.
Yeah,
it's
very
it is.
topic that's uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable,
for everybody.
but I think discomfort is, I just think that's the way
where the
sometimes. Yeah, that's
It
where
is
the
where you
growth
grow.
is.
But I feel like sometimes I have to choose, and even, you know, they say the most segregated place on the planet is on Sunday morning in the church, right? And is that by design, or is that by groupthink, like you're saying? It's not always an adverse thing. It's just like, no, we just resonate with a certain message or a certain sound or a certain ideology.
The body of Christ is the body. It's not like, it's not a specific color of skin. You should not be separated by that at all. Like, that shouldn't matter.
How in this day and age are people still that, what's the word?
Divided or
Just ignorant.
ignorant.
Just completely like, I don't like this person because of the way they look.
I never thought me as an individual would be living in a time where we still have inequality between black, white. You know, I never thought we'd still be going through this police brutality stuff. I always thought that stuff was done like
Years
ago after Rodney King, or before, like my parents were going through it. You know, had Obama said something like 45 said, he would never been in office. You know, things are looked at differently when you have a black skin. And I know that for sure. And that's traumatic. That's traumatic as an individual, that's traumatic as a person, that's traumatic as a culture.
As far as like friends and stuff like that, not at all. You know, I grew up in DeSoto. It was pretty much, I mean, it's more predominantly black now, but it was pretty much just mixed. It was melting pot, right? And so when I went to Texas State in San Marcos, it was 5% black when I first got to the school. So, and even still, like, it was just so much love there. Like, I love that school. Like, I love my experience there. But work-wise, I see it every day, and I hate it. Like, I feel like there is a foot on my neck to not rise. And I know, like, that I'm capable of so much more. You know, I remember, prime example, I love where I work. I love what I do, let me say that. I love the cause that we stand for. But I remember going out for a specific job title there at that job. It was like a management position. I had been in management in the place I came from before, so I was like, you know, and I remember getting a call and they were like, you know, we think that there's a better role for you, and I'm like, okay. And it was, and I mean, and again, I enjoy what I do, but when I got there, it was me and it's my coworker who does exactly what I do, who's also African American, and we have a supervisor over us who's extremely young and not, to me, doesn't really have anywhere near as much experience as we have. And I feel like the difference is just even in that, you know, we'll say things that we know, like we feel strongly about, we've worked with children, and it's like not respected at all, and then someone else will come that, you know, this may be a white individual who has more degrees or whatever, and say the exact same thing we say and they're praised for it. And I'm like, we just said that.
Can you judge me for me, and not just assume because I'm a millennial I can't do that, or that I am always on my phone, or lazy. Gotten that before.
Somebody at 18 does not have the same thoughts, experiences, responsibilities as someone who is 35. 36. So there's no way.
36-year-old could have an
And they could at the same time, and they could. And I think that, I don't know what term they should come up with to change it. I just think they should just stop labeling in general.
It puts people in silos. Like when you label, label people, like baby boomer, millennials, whatever. Like you grouping people. So you're over here, you're over there. You don't know like what we've done. You don't know what we've done, or you can't account for any of our testimonies and our stories, or you don't know a lot about life because you just started, or you don't know this.
It's another thing to divide people.
Yes, definitely.
Another tool. I think it's a lazy way to market. You know, instead of saying we're looking for someone who is between the ages of 31 and 34 that might like old school music, but is really good at technology, but will cook a meal and hates micro. Like that is, you know what I mean? Instead of marketing that way, just say, calling all millennials, right? That's just a lazy way to market.
It's about having a circle that supports where you are in life and knowing what you want to do and knowing your dreams and goals, and they're not going to pull you away from it, you know. And so when you have a circle that's like that, even if you're dating or it's your friends or your family, it's very helpful.
I'll say in my experience being 30, married before and divorced, I've experienced in terms of financially both the need to be stable and the need to fulfill purpose, right? So, and part of that was because I felt like when I was married, like I couldn't take as many risks as I could being single. You know, when I was married, it was like I had a stable job, you know, I was making great money, and I felt like I had to have that because of I'm taking care of, you know, my family, etc. And then, you know, once I became a single person again, and I was like, okay, my purpose is drawing me away from this stable, comfortable corporate environment. And now that I'm like a full-time entrepreneur, I don't want to seriously look to date or marry, because I know financially I want to be at a certain point in my life to where the woman in my life is going to be able to receive, you know, this. It's about security for me, not necessarily like, you know, giving her lavish gifts and things like that, but just sense of security as a man to be able to provide.
I read certain books on leadership, and because I know, you know, going into that role, I want to make sure, you know, that I'm staying up to date, getting wisdom from others who are already in leadership positions that I can grow and get advice and be like, okay, you know, having somebody you can turn to. I wouldn't say necessarily going back to school, because I don't know if that's always the answer. Okay, I need to get a master's. Like, no, you don't always need to get a master's, but you do need to learn. So how can I learn to be better and prepare myself for that next level? So that would be something that I would ask.
So when you know, look at leaders and read different books on leadership, is it books about what you currently do within your own industry, or is it just, it's more, you know, how to manage people, or, you know, 5 ways to win friends and influence people? Is it more like general or very specific?
More general in leadership.
Okay.
So not necessarily a leader in teaching, not necessarily a leader in schools, not necessarily a leader in the corporate world, like just leadership. Good practices, that you see across the board. And you don't just read just one, like you find multiple ones and see kind of what the trend is, and then hear other people out, okay? Like listening to everybody say, okay, this is what I would like to see in my leadership wherever. And you know, certain morale, certain, you know, ethical decisions, like learning.
Then I always make sure I'm connected with individuals who want more. Like I never want to be around somebody who's basic. Like I want somebody who just don't want to be this white tablecloth.
Right.
Like, do you want to be a white tablecloth with lines? Like, give me something different here. Like, give me something different here. And I work with people now who are always focused on moving up.
I would definitely like to bridge that gap and bring a sense of unity. You know, when it comes to various things, you know, whether it's family life or, you know, finding your purpose in life, just like, I guess, finding like what our purpose, you know, here is. Because I just think when you have a why, it just helps you get up in the morning. It helps you to push forward and to be a part of that and to help someone find their why in life so that, you know, they have a reason to go on regardless of what trials and tribulations they may be faced with.
I really do think that just cell phones in general, because they have access to the internet, because they have access to things that distract you from your purpose and what you want to gain, you know, I think that's kind of the major thing, is that we've put so much love into a cell phone that you take it away, now I'm useless. You know, it's like coffee to some people. You don't give them coffee when they've had it every single day, they're useless. And so it's like, okay, if they don't have their phone, they could be more productive. They could do something worthwhile. They could, you know, spend time with people and learning to talk to people and learning to, you know, just be a family.
I hope that we are communicating more and not just cell phones. Yes, I agree, but like if you have a problem with somebody, stop talking behind their back and go to them. Like, communicate with each other. That's what I'm hoping for. And then the second thing that I would say is be more accepting of somebody. Okay, let them fall. You know, if they have a fault, you know, let it go away. Like, it'll be okay. Just talk to them, accept them for who they are. And when they fall, help them get back up. Like, accept others for who they are.
If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I would say unity is probably sums up in every industry and every social economic disparity. You know, coming at it from a lens of unity, I think is what I'm most hopeful that I think is going to cure everything, right? It's everyone working together on one accord. So.
Everyone deserves a little bit of grace in life. No matter what your story is, no matter where you come from, no matter who's high or who low, everybody deserves some form of grace, and I would like for us all to remember that love is love at the end of the day. Keep your head up, boy. Keep your head up, that's right.
You gotta fight with the homegirls.
Left and the right, cheer blue. It's tight like glue.